Timing the next major move for Bitcoin here is the topic of the day as we look at a major relationship between Coinbase and spot Bitcoin. And there is something that's actually really interesting going on that I've not looked at all on this channel. Well, probably because today is a relatively boring day with Bitcoin going more or less in a range for the past week, and it's time to get a bit creative. So in this case, I'm going to go straight to the chart view over here. We're going to look first at a chart actually of Coinbase. And over the past year, and starting in 2023, Coinbase really started to move ahead of Bitcoin in the sense that the upside moves were done kind of ahead of time, like in terms of like the date in which they happened sooner. But the lows were actually put in a little bit later, and I'll explain why this is relevant soon enough. But I want to go through this one by one for you, with you, and then you can kind of decide for yourself. But this first move that began in early January of 2023 culminated on the highs right here on the 30th of January. I just marked it off with these green vertical bars before a 42-day correction to the tune of 41.5% almost. Now, if we go over here to spot Bitcoin, we can see that same move occurring, but hitting its high actually on the 13th of February, as you can see right here, the date shown at the bottom, by the way, which I thought was really, really interesting, actually, just because it happened about 2 weeks afterwards. And you'd kind of expect these things to be trading hand in hand, but they were not. Coinbase was trading sooner. Perhaps that's because, Coinbase has some, had relationships with the ETFs and the way that they are going to use them. And Coinbase, I suppose, was one of the more direct corollaries to Bitcoin that was trading on traditional markets. So maybe insiders, knew something there, perhaps at Coinbase, who knows? Subjective information right there, but interesting nonetheless. Anyways, that move, again, happened 2 weeks after the Coinbase move. So Bitcoin spot hit its highs 2 weeks afterwards. Okay, is that relevant or not? Well, we're going to go on first, and then we'll go back, and believe me, there's going to be something to be here. Anyways, the next move that Coinbase and Bitcoin saw did hit its next high for Coinbase on the 20th of March, right here, again on this green vertical bar. So 20th of March. Okay, on Bitcoin spot, that same move hit its high on the 10th of April, about a little bit more than 2 weeks away from that. I guess 3 weeks, closer to 3 weeks in that case. But again, afterwards, and right on over here for Coinbase, that corrective phase took 42 days for the next major low to be had, and a correction of about 44.5%. So very comparable to the prior one in terms of time, and then certainly in terms of a percentage drawdown as well. And then Bitcoin gets its next major rally. Coinbase gets its next major rally. In this case, this one actually happens at the same time as Bitcoin, and this one culminates on its high on Monday, the 10th of July. And if we go over here to Bitcoin, well, we can see the same thing. Monday, the 10th of July. Actually, this one was the only one that was literally the same, where they both hit the high. It looks like at about the same time. But if we do go down to days, I do believe that Coinbase hit that high a little bit earlier in terms of days. In this case, we do see yet another correction, this phase taking off another 40%. Again, very similar to the past ones, taking about 77 days. So a little bit of a longer one right here. Maybe if I were to reduce that to this first major low, it'd be 42 days yet again. So perhaps, that's probably the same. And especially when you look at the actual drawdown here, it's almost 40% as well. So perhaps that's a better way to be looking at it. But going onwards and forwards here now, realistically, it should be down here because it is lower. Anyways, going onwards and forwards here, we see yet another major high on Coinbase. This one done, the current high, by the way, for this year, this one done on the 26th of December. Okay, the 26th of December. When was it for spot Bitcoin? It wasn't until the 8th of January, again, about another 2 weeks away from when that happened on Coinbase. So we do see that Coinbase is likely playing ahead. We see it right again over here, but that's already happened. So this relationship won't be really relevant until we see the next potential run for Bitcoin. But remember, we do have a timing on the downside of these moves as well. And in this sense, we do see 42 days, 77 days, playing around with numbers here. If we were to make a range between 42 days or 77 days, well, 44 days would put us at a potential low in about middle of February. If we were to go for 77 days, somewhere in the middle there, then that would give us a range between kind of early-ish February and early-ish March for a potential major low on this market. And what do you know? Thus far, the correction from the highs on Coinbase has actually been significantly more than Bitcoin spot as well. This one already doing 37% to the downside. You know, if it does extend that a little bit more, I'm just kind of postulating here towards 40%. That'd bring it down to a low of like 115. Current low is 118, so pretty damn close there already, is my point. But you know, looking at this, does that line up with anything else that we do have? Well, in terms of timing, very likely yes, because that's around the time of the, that would be before the halving, which we do expect likely a low is put in before the halving. But from that time to the halving, we do expect sideways. We don't really expect any major upside for Bitcoin to emerge, certainly not above the current highs. But even before that, you know, not really even anything sustained to the upside until after the halving has been the relationship in the past. So going back to it over here, you know, Bitcoin just put in its high again on the 8th of January, so about 2 weeks ago now. You know, realistically, do we expect these to kind of trade hand in hand and continue that overall relationship? Well, Bitcoin's been having a very similar relationship as well, in the terms of its downside moves of this year have been 22% right here. It's been 20, almost 21% right here. It's been on the third correction, another 22% right there. Very, very similar, very fucking similar. So if we look at it over here, and we've seen that, and we see that Coinbase has already played out nearly the same correction. It's very, very close, but somewhere around that 40%, which is very much in alignment with all these prior ones. We can probably expect that this current correction is going to be similar for Bitcoin compared to its prior corrections this year as well. At least. I mean, obviously this is not done just yet, but we'd expect, you know, probably soon. Anyways, if Bitcoin were to play 20% down, that'd put Bitcoin at about $38,000. I do still think that personally, that would be, that does seem like kind of hopium to me right now, but it would suggest that at least we see a move down around there. Very, very likely. And then Coinbase, well, when that one starts to actually level out and put in a low, we can start to actually confirm that. But tentatively speaking, at least down around there. You know, if we do see Coinbase take another leg lower, then we know that something new is going on. We know that something new is likely happening. And as we've gone over it in last Saturday's video, you know, there is pretty good reason to believe that, at least for Bitcoin. But this is probably my most bullish way of looking at it, if you want to call it bullish, compared to last Saturday's video, which would probably be the most bearish scenario. So you have kind of a worst case scenario and then a best case scenario, still resulting in the same thing more long term. You know, Bitcoin's still likely poised for second half of this year to be, I would imagine, pretty damn good. But the question is, how far down do things come right here? Because it's probably gonna be the, you know, the last like major opportunity, in my opinion, before this run really gets started. You know, if you're trying to position yourself for the very long term, you know, think like a year to 2 years out, let's say. So in this case right here, again, best case scenario, probably, you know, about 20% down. We do expect these corrections to be about the same. They have been, and the current one for Coinbase is. In terms of timing, again, we're probably looking somewhere between 42 days from the high to 77, 76 days from the high. So that's basically like a month and a half to 2 months out to get that next major low, And seeing as we just put in the high here in early January, we're probably looking towards maybe middle of February to middle of March. Would be a little more accurate for Bitcoin spot. So yeah, it's kind of a fun way of looking at things, I guess, on this slow Sunday morning. We'll see how this one actually holds through, but the relationship has been good thus far, and 3 times does make a trend. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 now here on Coinbase, all playing out on the same. Bitcoin working on its 4th, and I would expect that it's probably going to be very, very similar as well, based off of that. At minimum, again, probably somewhere down around here, like low 38. Like I said, maximum, maybe subtract another $10,000 from that number, and the reasoning for that can be found on last Saturday's video. Anyways, this would be a good place for me to say that if you find this content valuable or any way entertaining, or even if you fucking hate it, please do consider liking and subscribing. It's all good. You can always unsubscribe later. Anyways, just looking at Bitcoin from a different vein, you know, yesterday and the day before, and just this past week, I've been more or less saying a bounce is more likely. I still do kind of think so. One more bounce off this region right here. But to be fair, Bitcoin on the daily still playing below the median of the HPDR. So kind of still have to look at it as bearish. I mean, that is where your downtrends do emerge, but I still think you're going to probably get something like that, bounce, and then lose it again, and that's going to be the real move down. And that would still kind of align actually with the timing over here, because that would be, 2 weeks from the high now. So funny how that works. Funny how that works. Maybe not so funny for some people out there, but I think it's a little bit funny. Anyways, let's see what the weekly looks like as well. Just curious. Okay. Yeah. Actually, okay, now that I recognize it, something is going on here. Okay, how did I not see this before? So now that I recognize it, the weekly time frame is actually about to lose the median as well this week, as it is going to be closing today in 16 hours, 23 minutes, and 7 seconds. And assuming that Bitcoin closes anywhere below 43,100, it will officially lose the median. Thus, a corrective period is very, very likely. You can see in this past year, anytime that Bitcoin has lost the median, it's actually played at some point down at minimum to the bottom side of the blue 50% of historic returns range lows here. Again, this will probably change coming into tonight's new open for the new weekly, but as of right now, it's 35,350. So again, we'd probably be looking, somewhere down around there. It might get marched up to like 36, maybe even 38 over time as well. Definitely possible, but you start to see these things really start to align. So we've got a worst case scenario now, and now we're starting to really formulate the best case scenario. So that'll be the next big thing within this market, I expect, happening in the next month-ish, or less than a month, to maybe about a month and a half, and that'll be the big focus of the channel. Just kind of judging that. It's going to be probably more boring time. If history is anything to go off of, which typically is, so fair enough. Anyways, short-term bounces again, completely fine, but as long as Bitcoin's living below there, it's corrective time, as we have seen throughout this past year for sure, and even before that as well, to be fair. And also assuming that, or not assuming, but seeing as Bitcoin on Coinbase did already close for the weekly, and it did close at 41,600, we're probably going to see that also occur for Bitcoin spot, although it did not lose its median, I should say. But one before the other, I suppose. Anyways, that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. I'll sign off on that note. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.